We came to Tromsø chasing the northern lights with big hopes and absolutely no guarantees. Was spending over £1,000 on multiple Aurora chases actually worth it? Or could we have just stood in the hotel car park for free? Because when you look at the price tag, that car park starts to look like a serious option. A trip to the Arctic Circle is a huge bucket list moment, but it's also an expensive gamble. Nature doesn't care about your plans, your bookings, or how far you've travelled, and we knew that if the weather didn't cooperate, we could go home with nothing but a lighter wallet and some very expensive memories of cloud. But after seeing the Northern Lights on 2 consecutive nights, here's what actually worked for us, what we're very glad we didn't do, and the one thing we really wished we'd understood before we started the chase. The biggest mistake people make is treating the Northern Lights like a scheduled tourist attraction, as if they'll politely switch on at 9 o'clock because you booked Tuesday. Our strategy was simple: redundancy. And once you understand how this works, it's really the only strategy that makes sense. We stayed in Tromsø for 7 days. Anything else felt like we were gambling too much, and crucially we booked 2 separate tours on different nights right at the start of the trip. This is what we think of as the 3 attempt rule. Book for night 1. If you see them, brilliant. If you don't, you still have time to go again. Leave it to the final night of your trip and you've got 0 margin for error. We didn't want to fly all this way and leave it to chance, especially not at Arctic prices. We also learned very quickly that no app can tell you when you'll see the Northern Lights, only when you might. Our guides weren't staring at phone screens. They were watching cloud cover, satellite data, space weather, wind patterns, and even then, what they could see clearly was usually only about an hour ahead. And this is important. The KP index does not show cloud cover. Understanding the cloud cover is the whole game. A KP index of 5 is completely useless if you're standing under a blanket of grey cloud, and sometimes, if KP index is too high, the lights might be visible in London, but not in northern Norway at all. That's why you're not paying for a seat on a bus, you're paying for judgment. On one night we didn't just drive around, we drove for 7 hours, crossing borders, purely to find a hole in the clouds. That's what you're paying for: fuel, flexibility, and local knowledge you simply can't replicate yourself. When you're researching tours, you'll see cheaper options on 50-seater buses. We'd strongly suggest avoiding them. Chasing the lights requires agility. A big bus is like a cruise ship, impressive, slow, and completely useless when you suddenly need to change direction. Great for sightseeing, terrible for hunting. Getting 50 people on and off a big bus takes time. We chose small group tours, 8 to 15 people in minivans. On our second night, our guide Mattia drove us away from the coast, chasing small breaks in the cloud that a big bus simply couldn't reach. Yes, it costs more, but when you've already spent thousands on flight and hotels, saving £50 on a tour that might miss the lights completely is a false economy. Okay, we need to have an honest conversation about what the Northern Lights actually look like. On our first night we drove all the way to the Finnish border. We did see the lights, but to the naked eye they looked like pale grey ribbons drifting across the sky. I remember thinking, is that it? And I was genuinely worried we'd done everything right and still misunderstood the experience. Cameras are far more sensitive than your eyes. They pull out greens and purples instantly, so for a while we were watching the show through our screens, not our eyes. It was beautiful, just quieter and subtler than the photos we'd built up in our heads. This is where expectations matter. You're not buying a guaranteed light show, you're buying the hunt. When activity is low, expect faint shapes that only turn green in your photos. Don't feel cheated, that's just how it works, and that's exactly why multiple chase nights make such a difference. The other reality check? The cold. We're talking minus 15 degrees Celsius. That's not just chilly, that's the kind of cold that makes you quietly reassess your life choices. The one thing that will ruin your night isn't cloud cover, it's cold feet. Before you book anything, do a comfort audit, not of your suitcase, of your tolerance. You'll be standing still in deep snow for hours, often at 1 or 2 in the morning. This is where excitement fades and misery creeps in if you're not prepared. Forget fashion, you need function. Nobody is judging your outfit at -30. Proper base layers, merino wool, never cotton, boots genuinely rated for extreme cold, and our secret weapon, chemical heat packs. We bought hand and foot warmers from the Intersport in Tromsø and put them in before we even left. By the time you feel cold, it's already too late. These little packs genuinely saved our trip. And one final reality, the bio break. There are no heated toilets in the wilderness. You are very likely peeing in a snowbank at 2 in the morning in -15. There is dignity in many travel experiences. This is not one of them. If that sounds like a deal breaker, don't book a 7-hour chase, or at the very least, stop drinking after lunch. And then came night 2. We'd been driving for 7 hours. We were tired, it was late, but Mattia refused to give up and took us to a small hilltop far from the city lights. And then the sky just exploded. This wasn't the grey fuzz from the first night, this was unmistakable, bright neon green dancing across the entire sky. This was the moment I put the camera down. That's when you know it's real. It was brighter than the photos, brighter than the screen. It was the most spectacular thing I've ever seen, and if we hadn't booked that second tour, we would have missed it. We got back to Tromsø around 2 in the morning, and if you're wondering, yes, the only place open is McDonald's. It's the most northerly McDonald's in the world, and if you've just seen the Northern Lights, you will never taste a better burger in your life. So, is chasing the Northern Lights worth the money, the cold, and the long hours in a van? Absolutely, but only if you plan for it. Don't gamble on one night, budget for small group tours, dress warmer than you think you need to, and bring patience, because when the sky finally lights up, you won't feel the cold anymore. If you're planning your own Arctic adventure, we've got a full breakdown on what this trip actually cost us coming up next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.